Good morning and welcome to day 9 of the 21-day novel challenge. So we are just about halfway through the challenge. We are over halfway through the novel and still going strong. I figured today I will answer a few questions that I've received from you guys and address one observation I thought was very funny. So to start with, a lot of people have asked me about those ribbons on the wall over there. What are those? Those are from Toastmasters. So Toastmasters is a public speaking group that I belonged to for several years. Every one of those ribbons represents a speech that I won. So 4 or 5 people would give a speech on a given evening, and the audience would vote. Whichever one was the best would win one of those ribbons. The medal comes from a higher level contest of the same sort. Toastmasters, just a quick commercial for this. If you've never been to a Toastmasters meeting, I highly recommend it. It is one of the single greatest things that has aided my professional development, and I can't recommend it highly enough. That said, let's move on to the challenge itself, which is still going great, as I said earlier. One of the observations that I received that I found very amusing is many people are telling me that they're pausing each day's video and reading the chapters that I've written, which I never expected anyone to do, so that's both a little flattering and a little scary because this is the unedited first draft. I am still committed to send you all a copy of that unedited first draft as soon as it's finished, so probably later this week. As soon as that's complete, I'll compile it as an ebook and I will send it out to the mailing list so you guys will have something to contrast. You can look at the unedited raw first draft and you'll be able to compare it to the final version of the book. Okay, so that said, let's leap into the challenge itself. I'm going to show you a little bit of my screen to address the next reader question that I received. Okay, so I wanted to cover a question that I get very regularly. And that's the, Chris, why don't you use the notes section of Scrivener? So if you look right over here on the right-hand panel, for those who don't use Scrivener, there is a synopsis section that you can use for notes, and then there is just a document notes section that you can add. The reason that I don't use those and that I instead add a sub-document is each one of these sub-documents is going to be deleted as we go through the book. So I will look at whatever this is, and when I do the rewrite, I will factor in all the notes that I have gathered here. So whatever this is, I'll read ahead of time. I'll rewrite the chapter, and as soon as I'm done with the chapter and I've made sure that whatever those notes are have been processed correctly, it'll get deleted. And so the clean final draft of this book will not have any triangles at all. They'll all be gone. And then I'll know the book is finished when I've reached that stage. It may not be the most intuitive way to do this. I'm sure there are better methods out there, but people were asking why I was doing it that way, and that is the reason. So hopefully that sheds some light on my odd practices in Scrivener. Okay, on to the recap portion of the day. So today was not a high word count day. I ended up with only a little over 4,000, which puts me behind what today's goal should be. So I was aiming for by this point to be at 45,000 and I'm a little over 44. I'm not terribly concerned about that because the book is looking like it's going to be a little shorter and I will still finish early. I may catch up tomorrow or the next day, but when I get to a point where I'm pretty exhausted and don't feel like the words are as good, I think that's a signal to me that I should stop. So today, I let some early morning errands get in the way, which kind of prevented me from getting my words done early like I normally do. So instead of being finished at, let's say, 10:30 or 11, it is now 12:45. So much later in the day. If I was already behind, I would keep pressing on. But since I'm not, I'm going to take a step back and focus a little bit more on the plot. I'm into Act 3, which is really, really critical for me when writing the first draft. The way that I plot and edit, I think of the third act of your book as the payoff to the reader. So they've been with you through all of Act 1, all of Act 2, since the blurb when they bought the book, and they want this wonderful conflict that you have promised to be resolved in a very satisfying way. And so there's all these links that you have to draw between Act 1 and Act 2 to get into Act 3 so things will make sense. So for example, in Act 3, I have a scene where there's a spacewalk. There are people in spacesuits outside the ship. And the problem with that is, now that I'm writing it, I realize this, the ship's really close to the sun. If people did that, they would be incinerated instantly. It's not possible. So what I'm going to need to do in Act 1 is introduce kind of a field, a protective field that these ships are capable of generating so that I could explain how this ending is going to work. And it's only in writing the ending that it becomes clear to me what I need to do to Act 1 and Act 2 to make them support Act 3. So Act 3 is, well, for one, the most fun to write because it's, the big conflict at the end of your book, but it's also the most vital because now you know these are the pieces I have to have in play in Act 1 and Act 2. And this is why it's so easy for me to go back and edit later, because once I've seen the whole novel, I can very easily read through it and say, okay, I've got to fix this, I've got to tweak that, I have to explain why in Act 3 this thing is possible, and I've got to do it in Act 1. So that's a kind of an abbreviated glance at what I'll be doing for editing in the future, but that gives you sort of an overview of the process. So that said, I think, given the time, we're going to go ahead and jump into the screen cap so you can see the word count for today and the sprints, and then it is on to day 10. So as you can see, 44,000 words today, not quite where I wanted to be, but very close. And here's the most important part, a big win in my book, 4 hours until project completion. So at 2 hours a day, that could definitely put me done by Thursday, Friday at the latest, which is wonderful, wonderful news. I'm thrilled at how quickly this is coming together. As far as the rest of the stats, looks like I'm still holding a little over 3,600 words per hour. As you can see, only 4 sprints today. 3 of them were longer than usual, which is good. And I'm happy with how that turned out. I only did 4 chapters. You see CIC, Last Stand, Desperate Plan, and EVA. So I'm now officially into Act 3. And it looks like 2 to 3 more days and these chapters are going to be finished. So that pretty much wraps up this video. Thank you so much for being along with the ride. I'll have some interesting stuff for you tomorrow in Day 10's video, and I hope to see you then. On to Day 10.